My profound gratitude to Dr. Thiagu, Assistant Professor, Central University of Kerala, for his inspiring inaugural short address. We are looking forward for your practical sessions in the afternoon, sir. Thank you very much.
The research orientation program, I will give you some inputs, some idea. What is idea? Yeah, all of them you are forget idea now. Independent variable. Just you take me myself. Wherever I go, I used to sit in first bench only. I never sit in the long bench. I myself motivated. If you are sitting in the first bench, you will be always in the first.
Once again, I am going to highlight because that is the basic of the statistics of SPSS. According to the Stevenson, he made the three categories. Madam already highlighted. So the first characters of the scale is magnitude, then equal intervals, then absolute zero. So these were the three properties only leads the what kind of scale it is. Okay. So whenever you have a doubt related to any variables or any data, just draw it and you will get the clarity. So the lower order of the scale is nominal, ordinal. In the nominal data or nominal scale, these three things not present. Nothing is present. These three properties not satisfied with the nominal data. What are the properties? There is no, what is the magnitude? It's a numerical value. Whether we can give any numerical value? Nominal means it's like a qualitative. Madam is already like a quantitative data. It's based on the character. So from this class I am going to divide boys and girls. Okay. Then Tamil Nadu, then other than Tamil Nadu. Rural, urban. Like that if you are classifying the people based on the category, then it's called as a nominal. Here there is no numerical representation. Once the numerical only it comes in equal intervals. So there is no equal interval. Therefore there is no absolute zero also because there is no magnitude.
The four questions are pro variable. Four variable. Listen, why we want to go for Amos? Sometimes you may raise a question. I have the four variables. We want to compress into one. Compress into one. This cannot be possible in the case of SPSS. This can be possible in Java. See, you take for example, a student can get some science scores, math scores, English scores. All the scores are combined together and make one score that may be used for some admission. How do you think? So that we can do it here. We can compress into four, not only four, any number of variables. 10 variable or 15 variable that all together compressed in one variable, and that you can take it into for the purpose of analysis and interpretation that I will tell you later whenever I am doing the picture.
Identification of the problem is the first step of educational research. Now let us see the different steps of educational research. Since we didn't get the initial part of the educational research, let me start with the steps in educational research. So the first step of educational research is identification of the problem. So that part I am going to do. The second phase or the second step is definition of the problem. Third one is formulation of hypothesis. Fourth one is collection of data or the evidences. Fifth one is analysis of data. Sixth one is verification of the hypothesis. Seventh one, conclusion. And eighth one is generalization. So these are the essential 8 steps. So research itself is a systematic process, and through these systematic steps, we have to get into the solution of the problem. So that is research. Then one more thing that we have to see is we have to check certain criteria in the selection of the problem. So one is external and the other is internal.
I started with what is research. It's a journey from the unknown to the known, and it's a work of an inquisitive mind. So even children do research, in the sense you tell them not to do something, they go behind it. But what we are talking about is not that kind of a research. It's an academic research. It's an academic activity, and an academic activity has to be very systematic, very scientific, and it goes deep into a deep inquiry. I just want to tell that research is not all the same. We can approach a research in one or two ways. There are two main ways in which any research can be approached, and one we call as the inductive method or inductive approach, and a deductive approach. So you can, in the first case, in inductive research, you observe, collect data, you analyze it, then you identify patterns, and finally you develop a theory. In the other method, it's the other way around. You start with a theory, you derive an hypothesis, then you analyze the data that you've collected, then you understand whether the hypothesis can be accepted or rejected, and finally you can revise the theory or hold good what you have started with. So you're just making it established and more concrete. Those are the two approaches in research. You also have many types of research. When we talk about research, the difference between each is so fine, and most of them are so intertwined one with the other. So you have the two main types of research we call as basic research and applied research. Basic research, you are not, again, it is almost like inductive research. It is more qualitative, and we are trying to understand what is lesser understood phenomena, and we are not interested in creating anything. But after finding a basic research, we can apply it in order to go about. For example, you may do a basic research to understand whether there is what is it that is required to combat corona. You also have other types of research which we call as descriptive and analytical research. Descriptive, again, is like the inductive research, like basic research. It just tries to describe something. Whereas in analytical research, you try to find out why cyclones occur. What is there? Is there a difference in temperature? Or is there a difference in pressure? Why is this happening? Is it because of location of India? So why, how, and why is it occurring only at this particular time? Why not in any other time? So these are all the questions that are answered in analytical research. You have another kind of research that's conceptual and empirical research. Conceptual research, as the name suggests, is based on theories or concepts, more philosophical. So we think of, you take a particular concept, you take a particular theory, and you try to understand or develop on those concepts, and we try to establish whether the concept is true. But in empirical research, it's data-based, it is experiment-based, it's observation-based. So most of the science researches are all empirical researches. Then you have qualitative and quantitative research. I'm not going to the details of it because we are having another series on the qualitative and quantitative researches. I just want to mention that qualitative research is more concerned with human behavior, like attitudes, opinions, motivations. So these are all involved in qualitative research. Quantitative research can be complementary to the qualitative research. It is based on measurements of quantity or amount, and it is always expressed in quantifying. So we are using certain tools for testing, and like empirical research, quantitative results also include a lot of statistical process, analytical tools, or computational tools are used in drawing conclusions in quantitative research. So at the end, I just want to tell you what is good research. There is nothing like really good research, but if you have to do good research, you have to solve a problem, normally a problem that is of very immediate necessity. So not any problem. Normally a problem chosen should be of immediate importance to society. What is the purpose of educational research? In education, we have so many purposes. So usually I told you it is more for student body, behavioral research. You can understand so many things from this. I'm just listing a few here. So like regarding enrollment, attendance of students, to find out dropouts, to understand the quality of education from time to time.
Directly to the variables. So we already knows what is a variable. Just I'm going to define the terms what is variable. So it's the quantity or conditions that can change. So if you are able to change anything during your experimentation process or during your research process, then we may treat it, that term is called as in variables. Now I'm going to focus different types of variables. The first thing I'm focusing on independent. If you look on deeply about your research work, even in the experimental method as well as the survey method, also we may treat independent variable as well. We may select as independent variable as well as the dependent variable. See, this image shows the exact meaning of the independent. So independent variable represent a variable that can control, particularly in the context of the experimental method, the variable which are able to manipulate from the investigated sites, they may use the term as a independence variable. That's why I'm using this term X. So here, normally as a researcher, we are using the term X is represent for the independent variable, Y is represent for the dependent variable. The X, it's called as a causing variable. So once we may use the terms for the experimental method, cause and effect. In the case of cause represent independent variable, effect represent the dependent variable. Normally the independent variable, we may use the term exposure, explanatory, as well as the manipulated variables. The different terms the people are using. Now in the case of the experimental method, I'm going to be incorporate one more variable that is called control variable. See, in this case, the last two example, I'm focusing on the independent variable, like pouring the water or the fertilizer amount. So that is called independent variable. In the case of dependent variable, this is called the growth or the plant height. That we may treat it as a dependent variable. That is called outcome also. But in the case of the experimental method, we may keep it some kind of controlled variable. Why? In the sense, suppose I'm I'm having the two planets A and B. That the port size should be different to each port, in the sense there is a chance the growth ratio may be changed. That is why we have to keep some kind of controlled things while doing the experimentation. That is why we have to keep some kind of controlled things. Everything you want to be remain constant and unchanging during the process of experiment, we can keep it that variable as a control variable. Suppose if you are taking the consideration of the third variable z, that variable may act as a different mode, like a confounding, mediating, as well as the moderating. There's a different terminology we are using when we look on to the variable of z. Just I'm going to show what is that z represent in the case of the confounding variable. So this image, you can easily understand what is the confounding. The confounding represent, so we already know that x and y, x is independent, y is dependent. But in the case of the confounding variable, both the x and y are affected by z. Mediating variable. See this image, it is somewhat to be differed compared to the previous images. In this case, x, y, it may affect, that's we knows. But in the case of the mediating, here that z is acting as a mediator of x to x and y. Now I'm noting the third example of zeta. So see, this is called as a moderating. What is a moderator? Here the z is act as a moderator role. So it may be affect the association of the x and y. It won't be directly influence the x, or it won't be directly influence the y. It may be affect the influence. It may be affect the association of the x and y only. Now I move to the next, what is called intervening variable. The intervening variable, what is it? It's like a linear pathway between the x and y. The z is acted as a moderator only, but like a linear way. For example, the x is I'm taking consideration level of education. Then z is a third variable. So if the level of education is to be increased, in the sense there's a chance the income level may increase. If the income is increased, what is happen normally? The spending, the expenses may also increase. Suppose the level of education is low, therefore the income may reduce. If the income is reduced, what will happen finally? That level of expenses also may reduce. So this is called intervening variable. The third variable may intervene between the two variable of x and y. The different textbook have highlighted the different kinds of terminology while they're talking about the variables. Now I'm going to highlight the different classification of the one more classification that is called active variable as well as the attribute variable. What is an active variable? Variable which can be manipulated. In the case of the experimental method, we may use the term as a active variable. Then the next thing we know is the demographic variable. Sometimes we may use the term as a background variable. The demographic variable as well the background variable, it relates to the sample. It describing the sample only. Sometimes we may use the term as a sample characteristics. That's why I'm giving the example like age, gender, occupation, matter states as well as the income. This may become under the demographic variable. Normally the demographic variable may lies on the nominal data, even the variable which are taking as a demographic variable, we may keep it in a different terms like a dichotomous or a binary or trichotomous or a multiple variable. What's the dichotomous in the sense, if you are able to categorize the types of the variable into only the two classifications, then we may use the called as a dichotomous. For example, some people we may divide yes or no type, so true or false. That also may come into the dichotomous or the binary. Then the locality, rural, urban, pregnant, non-pregnant. So die represent two. So similarly, there is a term is called trichotomous variable. It represents represent three. So if the investigator can divide that independent variable or the demographic variable into three classification like urban, semi-urban, or rural, or Hindu, Muslim, Christianity. Like that, if he is able to classify the three classifications of the variable, then we may use the term as a trichotomous. But what is maybe multiple variable? So it means that more than three or more. So more than three or more or four. Three or more we may treat it as a multiple variable. For example, blood groups. So we know the blood groups types A positive, B negative, AB positive, AB negative, and O. So lot of blood group types are there. Therefore, we may treated that variable as a multiple variables.
Review of literature is the basic to be done at first any research. The reason for doing review of research lies in the context. When I say context, any research is not 100% original. In the sense, at least in partially related to that research, some researchers might have done already in the past. And in future also, someone else will continue his or her research based on your research. Therefore, it is a continuous process. It is a continuum. Hence, there is a need to fix what was done in the past so that it doesn't duplicate the previous research. Then, the second need for doing the research, it demonstrates your ability, your knowledge, and your scholarly professional skill. Doing research demands professional skills and knowledge. To prove that you have done professionally this research, you should have completely done the review of research. To get the knowledge on the subject that you are going to do research, you have to read a lot. Read a lot related to your intended topic. That is possible only by going through what was done in the past. Then, the next need for doing the research is this. In any research, there will be a research gap. What is a research gap? In doing any research, all the aspects that you intend to find out may not be possible to be researched. Something may not be done in research or purposely or intentionally excluded, and this would be given in limitation. Any research has its own limitation, and those limitations becomes in a way the research gap. So the future researchers can take up their research topics or research area or research scope by going through the research gap. And going through the research gap will help you to formulate a new, original, uncopied research problem for your thesis. Then, it is essential that you should have a complete conceptual framework or theoretical framework on your research that you are going to do. To have this concept clarity, you have to do review. Then, any research could be done, it is possible using different methods. You can use experimental method, you can use survey method, or you can use case study method, you can use qualitative, quantitative, mixed research method, any method. But to fix which method would you prefer, you have to review the previous studies methodology or the previous researchers effort or footsteps. How to search the review of research? Easiest way is this: search in databases. Plenty of databases are available in Google. It is available at free of cost. Most of the databases are free of cost. Some need to register and some doesn't need to register also. So go to the database and search for it. The common and the most available, easily available, most used database is Google Scholar. Second step is cataloging. What is cataloging? Cataloging is dividing the collected reviews under convenient, research useful, feasible subheadings. For example, you can classify your collected reviews like this. What are the survey studies put together? What are the experimental studies from the collected reviews? You put together. What are the case studies? Put together. What are the meta-analysis? Put it together. Then what are the tool construction or tool developmental studies? Then put together. Then what are the thematic studies? Put together. Like this, you can put under different heads. This is called cataloging. Then next step is filtering. Filter for using some criteria, using some yardsticks, you can filter it. When you collect, there will be many. All cannot be included. You have to exclude some. How to exclude? Fix some criteria. Look at this slide. This is an example. I have taken it from one of the research papers. The exclusion criteria are, what is the criteria? Number one, language. Only English written articles are included. Then what is excluded? All the articles, all the reviews that you have collected not in English are excluded. Then timeline. Prior to 2018, it is included. Okay. Then what have you up to 2018 you have included. Then next stage is writing the first draft. So you have collected, you have cataloged, you have filtered. Then now it is a time for you to write the critical review, write the first draft. After writing it, compare with the reviews of the standard journals. How the standard journals have presented their critical review. Have a knowledge of it. Then based on that, try to modify, try to improve. Then you can show it to your professor. She or he will be of help. You can show it to your fellow researchers. They will give you an idea or feedback. You can show it to your friends. They will give you some idea or suggestions to improve. Based on that, you draft it and finalize it.
So the need for identifying the research gap. The major purpose of why we go for literature or literature is that in order to identify the research gap. So it primarily it will take a long period of time to really go through many texts or from the right sources of references. You'll be gathering knowledge on what area you are about to carry out the research. So based on which you will be definitely arriving at some point to decide on that area. So this is the major purpose why we really need to go for wide reviews, wide literature reviews. So literature reviews really help us in identifying the research gap, irrespective of the area that we decide or select. Because some research scholars or some research guides will insist on selecting the title and then going for review, but some some research guides will insist on going for literature first primarily, and then they will suggest to select the title. So this is the major significance of the review of literature. So once if you go through the literature, you'll understand the real need or the purpose of how to identify the title, when to go for the when to begin the research, or how to arrive at a title, all this. So generally searching for studies is one major, this is the first step. Then prioritizing, sorting and classifying, and critical reading and conceiving the ideas, phrasing the study with acknowledgement. So this is very important, because I have seen in some theses very critically, some of the research scholars, they try to plagiarize, what we call it like mosaic plagiarism. So they review one study for which they would be giving acknowledgement in the second chapter, and the remaining aspects like the second para, third para, or the second part of the review, or the third part of the same review would be taken from somewhere else, from other studies, but they would not be acknowledging. So this would be easily found out in the plagiarism check. So you should not do that. So for any of the standard reviews that you are really citing, you should really know how to acknowledge it. Okay, that should reflect in the bibliography, and that should be reflected as footnotes if it is essential. So all this has to be really taken care of. Acknowledging the review is one of the major aspects. So acknowledgement, direct acknowledgement of the author, or secondary acknowledgement of, because you will be reviewing one review in another book. So there are some formatting styles that tells you to really acknowledge the primary author. Okay, but the researchers would be acknowledging only the secondary authors. So this has to be taken care of. Okay, so finding the coherence of reviews across other studies, and knowledge of the sources from which the study is reviewed. So this is very much important. If ever you are taking any of the reviews from books, then you would be you have to know, because in bibliography we see there will be, in the present day context, there are a lot of websites that are presented, like there are a lot of journal references from the websites has been presented in the bibliography. But students may not be knowing, the research scholars may not be knowing that many of the journals that are presented in the present day thesis are from the closed sources, because even to have a review of any one of the journal, you have to pay a lot, especially journal BPS, that is British Psychological Society, or American Psychological Association journals, or Taylor and Francis, Routledge. All these are not primarily open source. These are all closed source. But without knowing this, many of the researchers would be listing out a lot of reviews in their lot of references in the bibliography. So please don't do that. Okay, see that whether you have taken it from closed source or open source. Whenever you know the source, definitely your bibliography will be very strong. So for this purpose, you'll be, from the beginning of the research period itself, you have to maintain a separate note. You can call it as a biblio note, in which you can day by day you can write the review sources of the reviews, which will definitely add strength to your bibliography. So organizing the content and writing the review and acknowledging the review cited. So these are the primary processes that is involved in the review of literature.
Sir, are there any reviewing strategies in social sciences to collect reviews?
Nothing in specific, but there are certain strategies that we generally follow, because whenever you collect a review, you should know the basis of that is the context of the study. So without knowing the context of that, is why I told you whenever you are reviewing, you should see the entire paper. You should go through the entire paper. Without knowing the entirety of the paper, if you try to review a study, you may be ending up in some errors. Okay, so the primary strategy is that you have to be true in identifying the sources and writing the reviews originally. Okay, it is a little effort, that you can put in writing of the reviews. Practice writing the reviews. Okay. So once if you keep writing reviews, definitely at one point of time you will be the master of writing reviews, which will really help you in writing good reviews. Especially many project proposals, they expect standard review, as you asked, strategies reviews. Okay. I don't really think that there is separate strategy for social sciences.
Okay. To support what Dr. Prabhu said,
So please.
strategy is available only for collecting the reviews. No strategy is available for writing the reviews. Writing the article is based on certain methodology, and you learn it only by doing it. As well said by Professor, you write, you start reading the reviews from quality indexed journals, how they have written. You based on collecting the reviews from standard journals, collect it, then you conceptualize how they have formulated the critical reviews. Based on that, you can imitate, and you can have your own style. By writing, you will get it. There is no ready-made tech available for writing the review.
Sir, if you have new problems and there are no reviews, how can we go about with that? Because as a researcher, in my experience, I faced that. So persons who are now the scholars, the research scholars who will try to take a new problem are finding it very difficult to go for review of related literature, and they find it they don't choose the new problem. So how to go about with it? Because they don't have reviews, right? So how to go about with it?
To my knowledge and understanding, ma'am, so there are reviews. There are close reviews related to the particular variable on the study. Maybe I don't find any that new variable that a candidate could select where there is non-availability of reviews. If the variable is clearly selected, then definitely there will be at least related variables. At least you can find the reviews for related variables.
Yeah, what I felt was it was long back. It was in 2006. I did about the fuzzy concepts, and
Okay.
I faced such difficulty of not getting any reviews.
Okay.
And it was an experimental study, and I had to go here and there. Finally, as you said, I could collect a few reviews where the other disciplines have been doing on an experimental study like that. So the reviews were very, very few when
So
I
in
was
that case,
doing.
you will be really going for related reviews. That is what I have insisted in my presentation, that the review of literature and review of related literature. For the non-availability of reviews, you can say it is a review of related literature or related variables.